Welcome, Salima. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Maybe before we jump in, you could get a little description of what it is that you do, and maybe how did you get into that?
Yeah, so my name is Salima. I'm a personal branding coach. I started something called UFlourish, which is basically just an online platform and community that helps personal brands. And I started thinking about personal branding in college, actually. When I started college, I was like, okay, I know exactly what I want to study. But then as I was kind of going through, I was like, okay, like that's all. Like I always knew, okay, I'm going to complete this degree and get this job. And I never really thought about anything else. And I noticed that in the place I used to work in college admissions and recruitment and financial aid. People used to come in to the office and they're just like, okay, I just want to get this degree. And they're not really thinking about how they would enjoy it, how what other things that they could do to enhance their own life and think outside of just, that particular degree. So I was like, you know what, maybe there's something here. So I started thinking about it more, researching more, and I realized personal branding is something that so many people don't prioritize. It's something that could be used in a resume, just like making you stand out from other applicants. It's something that you can use if you're starting your business because people buy from people. They don't buy
Yeah.
because they can buy because a product is good, but they'll buy a good product from a good person, a person that they know and feel like they can connect to. So personal branding is everywhere. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a student, if you're a workforce professional. So I decided to create UFlourish to kind of help people develop one as I'm developing my own. So yeah, that's kind of how I got started with everything.
I remember you had a post when you were asking people to define personal brand. How would you define it?
And personal brand as your gifts, your talents, your passions, your skills, your expertise, your personality, your life experiences wrapped up, tied in a bow, and presented to the world. So there's no cookie cut answer for what a personal brand is because you literally create what you want it to be. So basically, how do you want to be defined? If somebody were to say, here is Paul, you want to know and be in control of what people are going to say about Paul. So that's kind of what a personal brand is.
And like one thing that I wanted to ask is that I think many times when people are thinking about their gifts or what they're good at, many times people struggle with like confidence, or they feel like, well, I am not really that good at like anything, like I'm just like a normal person, or I maybe know a bit of this or a bit of that. How you help people to maybe work with that confidence or see their gifts even if they feel like they might be lacking confidence?
Yeah, no, of course. Confidence is honestly the biggest factor in why people either succeed or they don't, because somewhere along the line, everybody tries something for the first time. And it's that initial leap of faith that causes you to see the success that you want to see. So with confidence, something that I always tell people is there's always going to be somebody that knows less than you and knows more than you. There's always going to be somebody that's worse at this than you and better at this than you. So when you know that you're always going to be in that middle,
Yeah.
just thrive. Just go forward and do whatever it is that you want to do. And just know that there's always room to grow, but there's always somebody that's at first step. Even if you're at level 3 and you're like, yeah, but I want to be at level 6, like everybody else. No, because there's somebody who's starting at level 1.
Yeah.
So you can learn from level 6 and you can teach level 1. There's always that up and down, and you're always in between. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think also with the wanting to be on level 6, like many times people might feel bad that you're not at the level 6, but at the same time I think it's important to keep in mind that person who is at level 6, they were at level 1 at some point. So they are just probably just few steps ahead of you, and probably they started earlier than you did. And that's one thing that I was actually thinking about it today, that especially people that are younger, they a lot of times they want to rush things, or you want to have success right here and right now, which is related to like instant gratification, but also that because they want it right here and right now, they don't realize that they actually have a lot of time. Even if you're like 30 years old, you have like 20 years at least that you can work. And in 20 years, you can accomplish so much. And that's one thing that I was like, wow, why do people rush? Because then when you rush, you feel like you're behind, and then you feel bad, and then you get like this negativity. But actually, when you start to enjoy the process and you maybe let go of wanting those like results, you can enjoy it better and move ahead, um, I don't know if faster or slower, I don't know the research behind it, but like maybe more with ease or with less resistance, because then you're not focusing on, oh, I'm not there yet, I have to get there, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah. No, that's a big reason why a lot of people look from the outside for their satisfaction and for their gratification. It's like, okay, if I get this job, I'm successful. If I get this promotion, I'm successful. When to me, I want to redefine success to be, where are you showing up as yourself? Because if I know that I'm doing everything that aligns with what I like to do and what I'm strong at, and I'm going into environments where I can learn things that I want to learn, every day is a new journey and every day is exciting. You know, if I'm only looking at those metrics where it's like, I need to make this amount of money to feel happy, then of course you're always going to feel that sense of, okay, I'm not getting there fast enough.
Yeah.
But if you tell yourself, I just want to be able to be myself and do what I love to do and make a living off of it, or just have something fun to do outside of work. When those goals are centered towards who you are and aligned with who you are and your passions, you can feel successful every single day. And to know that there are people who focus on making an X amount of money, a year, and they could be 60 and miserable. They can be
Yeah.
millionaires, but miserable. And that's why you see a lot of these mental health issues with people that you look at and like, you have it all, but they don't have what I want people to build. And that is that sense of their personal brand, their sense of that they're showing up as themselves and doing the things that they like to do. So when you look at it like that, you don't feel like life is a rush, because every day is a new journey.
Yeah.
Every day you're opening up something new, you're learning something new, you're sharing something new. So life is a lot more exciting that way,
Yeah, like that's the thing, like, and a lot of things doesn't change. It's only like your perspective that changes. Like you just mentioned the alignment. How do you
Right.
advise people to find that alignment? Because I think it's really important to find it. So like what would you say is the process if somebody, let's say somebody wants to start their business or their build their brand, like how they find that alignment?
Yeah, so everything it takes reflection. And I feel like this is a part that people get like, this takes,
Yeah.
not everybody's a journaler, not everybody, I don't know if I just made up that word journaler, but not everybody journals. Not everybody spends a lot of time, with themselves. So that part is the trickiest part. But once you actually take the time to figure out what it is that makes you happy, what are your passions, what are your strengths? Once you figure those things out, then it's like, okay, does this business I want to start make sense? Because am I starting this business just because I see this person starting this business and
Yeah.
making this much money off of it? Or do I actually think I have the tools to share, the product to share, the service to share, that I know that it's coming from my heart, it's coming from who I actually am? So, or am I going into this job because my parents told me that, I have to get an education and go to medical school in order to be successful? If you don't feel like, you don't, if you don't feel like you thrive in medicine, then don't do it. Figure out what it is that you actually love, because I promise you, somebody working very hard in an area where they're happy will still be successful versus, those typical careers that are going to make you money once you just complete the requirements.
Yeah.
So that sense of alignment is just making sure you're opening doors and bringing on opportunities that align with what you actually like, instead of just doing something because it's working for someone else, or it can make you this amount of money.
Okay, so now imagine somebody is like, well, I know what I like, but I can't earn money with it. I think many people are like, well, I know what I love, I know what I really enjoy doing, but I don't see how I can actually make money with it or like provide myself doing it. So how do you respond to those people? Because I think there's a lot of people like that.
Yeah, no, of course. I break it down. So if, because I'm really not the type of person to say you can make so much money off of anything, because that's not true. There are definitely industries that are a lot harder to make money, make a living off of, but that doesn't mean you can't utilize those same skills in other areas as well. So if somebody came to me, I don't know if you have an example, I can't think of one right now, but if somebody came to me and I know it's going to be very difficult to make a living off of what they're
Let's say
passionate
somebody
about,
is interested in
I'm like, chill.
butterflies.
Butterflies.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do they like about butterflies? Do they like the science? Do they like, just the beauty of nature? Are they creative? Do they like art? Because what they
Like
can
they
do on
know
the side is, if
everything.
they're
They know like everything inside out about butterflies, like different types, or I don't know how you name that, where you can find them, how they are like developing and things like that.
Yeah. So there's butterfly gardens for one. You can get a job at a butterfly garden, just the groundkeeping and just actually maintaining the garden. But on your free time or outside of that job, you can share your love of butterflies through art. You could teach, kindergartners and preschoolers and even first, second graders always need an exciting curriculum to understand and learn nature. So you could definitely implement your love and passion for butterflies there. You could I'm sure other people love the beauty of butterflies. So you can create an Instagram page and just post lovely pictures of butterflies. You can sell wallpapers, desktop wallpapers with butterflies. Like there's so many different ways instead of just thinking, okay, I'm gonna find one channel for me to share my passions and that channel has to make my living. That's not really possible 100% of the time, but you can definitely spread little touches of your passion in so many different industries. I mean, you could talk to a baker and say, this is a really cool butterfly cake you can make and show like the different unique types of butterflies and they can create those cakes. So if you love something, there's always a way to trickle it into all of your different endeavors. And if it's something that you want to make a living off of, I say take the root of that skill. Take what it is that you like. So if you like research, if you like butterflies and you love to and how other butterflies operate and the science behind butterflies, do you also want to learn about ladybugs? Can you also
Yeah.
learn about other insects and other everything about wildlife and find a career that can incorporate your love of animals and see how that works for you. And just everything is trial and error. If you realize that keeping up a butterfly garden is not really what you wanted to do, just switch, find something else. But look at the core skills or look at the core of your passion. And if you don't think that you can make a career off of just the passion alone, take that core skill and see if it can be applied in other industries as well.
Yeah, and also I think one thing to keep in mind is that, well, first to be open-minded, and instead of focusing on what you can do it, search for somebody who's already doing it, as you mentioned before. And also to keep in mind that you don't have to do it forever. I think many times people also overthink it, where they think that I have to make this one decision about what I will do for the rest of my life. And then they can't make that decision because it seems so huge. But you can start like in fitness and end up being in, I don't know, in some sort of business, or I don't know, working with butterflies. You never know. And I have heard about people that have been in like being like executives and they end up working in like cruise ships or stuff like that because they just enjoy it. um and like that's I think a really important thing to keep in mind is that you're not making this decision for the rest of your life. It's just like for now. Because I think also what I wanted to add is that when you, let's say when there's an interest in butterflies, you just want to niche it down. Like when you make it really specific and you have really specific target audience, you can attract them much better. So like I was listening about, let's say somebody who's in art and they want to teach art. So instead of being like, okay, I teach people art, they can be like, well, I teach people how to draw in nature, certain like elements in the nature, and use it as a way to connect with their child when they are like having conversations as they do it and things like that. So that way you now are really niche, but at the same time, that being really niche, you will attract specific people and they will be more satisfied with what you give them. Because if you teach art like overall, it's really broad and people are like, well, what kind of art, how does it work? And then they are like, you can never satisfy everybody, like what everybody wants. But if there are people that are like, okay, this is exactly what you do and this is exactly what I want to connect with my children and do it in a way where we enjoy it, what we are doing, and we have fun and we create memories with this art that we can look back at and remember how we were doing it, that's exactly what I want. So I think finding a way how to niche yourself, which is not easy because like a lot of times we just want to help everybody with everything. That's something that I was like, okay, I can help everybody with everything. I can help with this. And then I was like, well, yeah, but that will just confuse people. So you just have to choose one thing that you focus on. And that's also when you can bring better results to your clients or people that you work with.
Right. No, yeah, niching is definitely important. I do think it's a lot more difficult to start thinking about niche right away because
Oh yeah.
you don't know yourself. You know, you're going into a new environment, you're starting a new business. You don't necessarily know how it's going to be received. You don't necessarily know how to present your message effectively. So the the process of niching down is something that definitely needs to happen. But I think it's okay to experiment. You know,
Yeah.
it's okay to try different things. I started off saying I'm a career coach. I got my life coaching certification and my career coaching certification. However, it was difficult for me to know how I can attract my right audience because it's so confusing. It's like, okay, what is life coaching? And life coaching still is a very broad term. When I
Oh
say I
yeah.
got my life coaching certification, it was not in a particular field of life coaching. It was just more so how to draw insights out of a person, how to ask the right questions to allow the person to reflect and actually answer in a holistic way instead of, saying, what did you eat for breakfast? What do you usually like to eat for breakfast? Like that
Yeah.
little word changes that kind of opens up the person's mind. So that's when I say I got my life coaching certification. I know I wanted to clarify that one time. That's what that really means. And why I did that in addition to career coaching was because I don't want to just say, this is what you need to do to land your dream job and leave it at that. Because most people go to work and they come home and that's when the burnout takes place because it's like they're not thinking about, anything outside of that career. So finding my niche was hard because I'm like, okay, I want to attract people who care about, their personal development outside of their career, but I also want to attract driven people. So then I was going through it. I mean, I think I went through probably 10 bio changes, just, switching and
Yeah.
switching and switching. And then finally I was like, this is what a personal brand is, what I'm trying to do, which is implementing your drive and your hustle and your motivation, whether you want to start your business or start a career. That's the career aspect, but then actually developing that and actually infiltrating like your personality through that, that's the life aspect. So I'm like, career coaching, life coaching, that's personal branding. So that's how my journey to niching down was. But I know that it's always difficult at first
Oh yeah.
because you don't really know who you're talking to. You just know you want to share the message. You don't know who's going to benefit from it. So niching down, it will definitely provide you a lot more clarity. With your example about the art, if somebody just likes art, but they don't necessarily know what they're effective at teaching, like what if somebody's better at teaching oil painting than they are with watercolors? You won't know until you try.
Yeah.
So it's definitely okay to go through that initial trial and error portion. But yeah, niching down eventually will give you your tribe. It will give you your community where you're going to be of value to them, and also use the same niching down with experiences that you want to learn it from. So for me, for example, I know that I'm pretty good at creativity and I'm pretty good at organization. However, I'm not the best public speaker. Actually, speaking on camera makes me extremely nervous. So I haven't started yet, but I know I want to look for someone who specifically coaches people speaking on camera. And I know that's a specific need that I have. So it's always a give and a take. I'm going to give my value and my knowledge to a specific audience, but also you want to learn to take from a specific audience to learn or to improve on something that's extremely personal to you. So personal branding isn't everything because you wouldn't know what you need to work on
Yeah.
until you have that personal reflection. Until I felt that stomach, that nauseous feeling when I see the camera screen, I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to talk in front of the camera. But yeah, so niching down is important in everything because then you have a life of alignment because everything you're doing is specific to you. It's specific
Yeah.
to the things you like. It's specific to the things you need to learn. So yeah, I definitely like what you said about niching down because it's important.
Yeah. Also, like what you said about the camera, I had before I started posting only recently. I didn't post for like since 2019, so like quite a while. I was like, I'm a private person. I don't like to post. I just want to like do my own thing, do my job and things like that. Um, but then like I started like when I started off, I had this like stress, not like stress, but I was thinking a lot about, oh, I don't have experience. I don't know how I will look in front of camera and things like that. But then I shifted towards, okay, I'm a newbie. So it's best to learn when you have the smallest audience because then you can make a lot of mistakes and nobody really gonna see it. Like there's not too many people that are
Right.
like watching. Um
Yeah.
and like that's when I was starting to be like, okay, um I will start posting like videos. I will start filming some videos and I will try to post like one video a day or something like that. But then like recently there's one group by Tony Robbins and Dean Gradiosi. I always mess up his name. Gradiosi. Okay, whatever. And like they had one challenge in that group where you had to go live and you had to tell what your friends come to you for, what they ask from you, what kind of advice they come and ask you. And that group is like 400,000 people. And you had to go live for like
Oh,
one to
wow.
3 minutes and you just had to answer that question. And I haven't really gone live. The only live that I did was like very recently when I went live on Instagram with somebody who invited me over on her like page to talk about mental health. Um, but that was about it. So I was like, well, it's not that like the only reason why I wanted to do it because I didn't want to do it. So that's usually when if you know that you're afraid of something, you will be afraid of it forever until you start doing something towards like changing it.
Exactly.
And another thing is that we
Yeah.
have all these like what ifs. What if I go live and nobody watches? What if go live and somebody like
Mhm.
starts to talk trash or whatever, or I mess up or something like that? And I usually like at this point I just look at it as learning experience where I'm like, okay, now let's say I did reels. Okay, that's out of the way. I know how to do it and I'm a bit more comfortable doing it. What else can I do? Oh, Clubhouse. I went on a Clubhouse. I spoke on a stage and I'm like, oh, this isn't that bad. Okay, what else can I do? Oh, I went live. And it's like once you start this streak of getting out of your comfort zone, the main thing is to keep going. Otherwise, you're like, oh, okay, it's enough for now. And you will get those times. But I think
Yeah.
it's like finding that enjoyment in getting out of your comfort zone, which I can relate to camera. Like I up to recently, I never filmed anything. I was like, I don't want to be in front of camera. I never look good. I don't know what to say. I feel awkward. All these things. I was like, I have no idea how to do it. Um, but then I was like, well, one thing that really helped me was to take it less personally and be like, this is just a job. It's part of your job. You just have to
Mm.
post. And people respond more to video and they can see more like your personality. And you have awesome personality as well. So I think it's about putting yourself out there. Then you're gonna see that well, people actually support you, and I will support you for sure. Once I see the video, I will be like,
Yeah.
hey. But it's really about like pushing each other because even like one
Yeah.
recent guest that I had, she said that she has been always wanting to start YouTube. And I was like, during the podcast, so when you're gonna start your YouTube? Oh, I don't know, maybe like at next month, which is like May. And I'm like, okay, cool. Um, and then I recently wrote her, when are you going to start it? She's like, oh, I will soon have a makeover, and that's when I will post my first video, probably at the end of the May. And I'm like, awesome. And that's when sometimes you don't even need much. That's another thing that I have noticed even within myself. I had a conversation with a friend about posting, and he said me, don't overthink it. Trust yourself. Like you don't have to make super like
Yeah.
smart posts or stuff like that. Just be yourself, and just go with the flow and trust the process. And I was like, whoa, I forgot to trust myself. Like it's so easy to forget it when you start to overthink, especially when you're trying to build up and you think about the content and you work with your clients and then you have something else and things like that. So you have many things going on that you forgot to trust yourself, that you think too much and you're maybe not present enough. And I was like, okay. And awesome thing is that people love to see people. So like, and you're even now like when
Yeah.
we are speaking, you have really like positive attitude. You're really like you have really good energy. So I think people will love to see that online as well. So definitely go for it. We'll probably talk about it more as well. But and I also know not somebody who is coaching with being in front of camera. So I can connect you with her as well. And like one thing that
Yeah, please do.
I will after the podcast I will send you to her. And one thing you said about um when it comes to like your personal brand, I think it's important to keep in mind. I just blanked. Um, Geez. Okay, I'll ask you the next question about the burnout, which is something that we just touched on. Because I think when you
Yeah.
start to build your personal brand, what happens is that you have so many things going on that you first, like, you have to prioritize, and you don't know what actually is the priority and how much what will take, or how to organize everything. And like, how do you help people to maybe first not to get to level where you. Oh yeah, another thing I wanted to mention was that you're a good example of how every task that you do, they come together. So you were thinking about life coaching. Oh, this is not for me. Career coaching. Oh, I'm not sure I want to do it. But at the same time, like, I think many times people think that, oh, I learned this and I'm not using it, as it was waste of time. But you're a really good example how you actually can use those skills in the future. It's not that anything that you learned is a waste of time. You can actually use those skills and make your niche, or let's say in your case you went into personal branding, but you're actually helping them with like understanding themselves and who they are and what are their passions, and then you help with building career with that as well. So you kind of combine both together, and you create like your own like niche from that. So I think that's something that I have seen with
Yeah.
people, that they are like, well, I want to start this, but I'm not sure if it will work out and if it'll be waste of time. And I'm like, it's not a waste of time. You always learn something new. You can always meet new people. So you never waste your time as you're doing it. So that was one thing that I wanted to add. Now back to the burnout question. So how you help people maybe to first prevent them from getting to burnout, and if they get to a place where they're close to burnout, how you help them to deal with that without like losing too much of their like performance, or like getting too low where it can affect them.
Yeah. I think the first step is one of my friends, Pace, he always says, what's the goal? And that question has helped me so much, because then I started filtering out my activities, because if it doesn't have a goal, then what am I doing it for?
Yeah.
You know, so when it comes to especially social media, that's where you see the burnout a lot, because you see people who are trying to start their own businesses and they're like, oh, I have to be on TikTok, I have to be on Instagram, I have to be on YouTube, I have to be here, I have to be here, I have to be here. And they try to go through so many different avenues, but it's like, no, like start with one, solidify one. How are you going to go do TikTok, YouTube, Instagram at the same time when you haven't even figured out how to use
Yeah.
Facebook? You know, like start little by little. And I don't think it's wrong to take those baby steps, because you could still have momentum, you know, and you could still have big leaps of faith. You could still, you know, be extremely ambitious, but you're taking your time through it, so that you're ensuring that when you're present, you're present. You're not present and like already thinking about the next thing.
Oh yeah.
Like here in this podcast, I'm present. I'm enjoying this. If somebody doesn't do it this way, they're like, oh my goodness, when am I going to be invited back? Or when am I going to do this? Or I should start my own podcast. I should
Yeah.
do, like, you know, so many different thoughts are going to go through your head. You have to learn to focus and filter and say, what's the goal? I'm not ready to have a podcast. I just told you, like, I can't speak in front of the camera properly yet. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
But
Yet.
what's the point of me starting a podcast when, yeah, what's the point of me starting a podcast if I'm not comfortable yet? You know, and just because I see you having a great podcast, it could be exciting. Like, oh my goodness, I want to do this too. And that, your brain is going
Yeah,
to
and
tell
keep
you
in
that.
mind,
Like,
like,
best believe
I'm the
your brain is
same.
going to.
You can also keep in mind that I'm the same. I
Yeah.
didn't like cameras, so I'm like an example where if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah. No, and sometimes you have to push yourself that way, because you'll never know until you try. And I always say you'll never feel ready ever,
Yeah.
because your brain is going to come up with so many different things to tell you you're not ready, but you all just take that leap of faith. But to prevent the burnout is just making sure all of your activities have a goal, and you're making sure that when your body tells you you need to rest, you need to rest. And starting a business, people can be up all hours of the night, all hours throughout the day, and they'll run themselves like a hamster wheel, because they're not really going anywhere. They're just going, 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 going,
Yeah.
going. But if you have a goal saying, okay, Salima, today you're going to focus on finishing your website, focusing on implementing the photos and adding photos into your website. That's what I'm doing today. And as I'm doing the photos for my website, I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to work on my SEO. I need to work on my scheduling link page. I need to do all of those things. I write them down and I'm like, I will get to this when I will get to this. But for right now, I'm focusing on adding the photos to my website. So when you kind of structure yourself and force yourself to take those steps, then when I do that, so many little things come to my head like, wow, I should add a video on my website because video is very engaging. And I'm like, okay, Salima, when are you going to create this video? Like you start becoming more realistic with yourself. And if you're able to make a plan with it, then go for it. But if you realize that you're adding too much on your plate, then it's like, okay, that can wait.
Yeah.
Let me do the video next month. Let me focus on this first. So really taking that time, everything is really just focusing on paying attention to you and yourself and asking yourself that question, what's the goal? Because when you realize that so many things that your brain is telling you, you're not necessarily, it doesn't make any sense for you at this moment, then you put it off for later, but you still will get it done. Like if you don't have an Instagram following, for example, and you're already thinking about going on to YouTube, like that's okay. But how are you learning to build a community? I feel like it's so much easier to grow on Instagram than it is to grow on YouTube. YouTube is a beast. It's very effective, but it's a beast.
Very
So
slow.
if you're dedicated, yeah. So if you're ready to jump all in into YouTube, that's great. Go for it. But if you're thinking to yourself, I want to do YouTube because this person that I admire on Instagram is also on YouTube and they're doing so well, then it's like, okay, are you really ready to dive in? Because it's going to take the work. So really just becoming more practical and realistic with yourself will prevent burnout because you'll be able to structure yourself in steady steps for you to still get to where you need to go, but in a pace that actually allows you to be present at every step. Because that's the key. You have to be present. Because if you're not, you're going to look back and saying, what did I do all of that for? Like I feel so tired and I don't even feel, fulfilled from what I had to do. So yeah, definitely just taking your time through every step, laying it out, being practical and resting when your body tells you you need to rest is how I prevent burnout and how I try to share with people to prevent burnout for them as well.
Yeah, what you said about being present, it's so important. And I keep telling you about baby steps all the time. The only way you can get ahead if you take baby steps. You can't let because
Yeah.
otherwise you get overwhelmed and you get burned out. So let's say if you start, well, easy example would be TikTok because it's relatively short. So if you now start and post like 5 videos a day, you will feel overwhelmed. Like it will be too much. Even like if you start with one a day, it might be a lot. But then you want to make sure that you have set aside time when you actually do it instead of trying to rush everything and then you feel behind. But if you set aside certain time, okay, this is like, I don't know, 1 hour that I'm spending to do that, you focus on that and don't overthink it. Don't try to make 50 videos in 1 week. You can't rush that like
Yeah.
process unless it's part of your like strategy, and let's say 1 week you focus only on like making 50 videos. That's different. But if you want to now do it every week, it's not going to help you. And like with what you said about being present, that's something that I have said so many times and also that I have learned myself. So like you want to do so many things, but the only way you can get them done is by being present. So now if you do one thing
Yeah.
and you think about the other thing you have to get done, you're not focusing on the first thing, and as a result you end up doing nothing. So and you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not
Exactly.
productive, I have too many things to do. But and there's like that one question, are you really too busy or you're just too distracted? Because and your thoughts can be distracted
Yeah.
as well, not just like notifications on phone or something like that. But if you have, you can get much more done even if you tried to go offline for 1 hour, and for that 1 hour you just do work and you don't look at any notifications. You just I don't know, if you create content you focus on that, you film, you edit, whatever. If you do something else, you do something else. But like for 1 hour you will see how much you can get done, because your brain is like, oh, we have to check if somebody messaged us or if we have any new emails or stuff like that. But you actually
Mm.
have to be present to do those tasks. And that's one thing that I have learned, is that when you are present and you focus on the task at hand, don't think about everything else you have to do. Because at this point, you have this one task to do. And until you finish the task, don't think about anything else because it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
You're just going to think about everything you're not doing. You will feel bad and you will end up doing nothing. And that's like one thing that I keep repeating to people all the time. Even when I have had many people that are like, my to-do list is too long. And I'm like, well, I think nowadays nobody has any day when you finish all your to-do list. Even if you finish it, you have something
Yeah.
that you take from tomorrow and you start doing it today. Um, So I think like what you said about your approach, when something comes in your mind as you do one task, you write it down and it's out of your head, but you are not forgetting it because it's on the paper. And I think that's really a good approach, because then it's not that you repeat it in your head, oh, I have to get this done, I have to get this done. You put it on paper and then you can look back at it later. Um, but like these things are
Yeah.
really simple like tips, but at the same time it's really helpful because like even that overthinking, that's something that I have seen with many people. So like how you maybe is there like anything else you do beside like writing it down, something that comes in your mind? Because I think, or maybe how you prioritize the tasks to do, because I think that's something that so many people struggle with.
Yeah. For right now, that's really been a struggle. Finishing a degree has and running a business full time is literally the most challenging thing that I've ever had to do. And I found myself definitely prioritizing my business because I'm like, this is what I'm enjoying. My degree, after a certain while, I'm like, okay, I'm over it, you know? But finding that prioritization, like listing out what's top priority, is so difficult, especially when everything's important. You know, I need to do my work in order to get my degree, but I also want to grow my business. So I need to create content. I need to meet with clients. I need to, you know, do all of the things I
Yeah.
need to do. So I just honestly, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, what time is it? All right. I focus on the first things first, and that's just getting ready for the day, you know? And once I sit in that and I'm like taking a shower or I'm doing my makeup, barely now, I barely do my makeup now, so sad. But, you know, do my get ready for the day, I really just sit down. I'm like, okay, what can wait and what needs to be done? When's this deadline? So if it's school, if my deadline is tomorrow, I should probably get it done today.
Yeah.
But with my business, if it's something that I know I can dedicate so much time when I have more time, like on Friday, for example, usually that's when I batch create content. So it's like, okay, this Friday, from this hour to this hour, I'm going to do nothing but batch creating content. When I'm that intentional about setting aside that block of time, then I feel better doing my schoolwork, you know, today. So just making sure that you actually schedule the stuff that you have to do if you're going to put it off. Because if you don't do it that way, then you're going to feel like you're not getting to things that you need to get to, or other things are going to come into your schedule. And then all of a sudden, your to do list is all over the place. But you literally have categories, and then you have to prioritize those categories. So if you're a mom or a dad, you know, your family is going to come first. So anything that has to do with your family, that's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
If you are a parent and you also are, you know, running a business, then you know that your business is going to come next. But what are the things that will provide, what are the things that are going to prevent you from showing up for your family? Those things you're going to have to set aside and put a, at a different designated time. If you're a student, me right now, I'm graduating next week, thank goodness. But if you're a student and also, you know, running a business or working, for example, what's more important to you? Are the experiences that you're receiving at this job more helpful to you than your degree? And if so, that doesn't mean don't do your homework, but that means, okay, I'm going to do as much as I can do within this hour for this paper. I'm going to write my best paper within this hour. Whatever I have at this point, it's above me now. Like I can't do anything more about it. I'm going to still try my hardest. And that's your thing about just turning off, you know, your devices for that hour and concentrating. That would be helpful in a moment like that, because you know you're still going to put the best to the best of your ability. So just saying, okay, from 11 to 12, I'm going to finish this paper. And then at 12, when I go to work, I'm going to be sure that I'm going to take all the experiences that I can get. Maybe I'm going to go grab lunch with, you know, one of my colleagues and see how, you know, he or she is managing it at this company. Or I'm going to get all my work done early so that tomorrow maybe I can take the afternoon off and then go back and see if I need to make any edits to my paper. So just categorizing the different things we have to do, then prioritizing those categories. Then the tasks, just designate them a time, whether it's today or tomorrow or next week. But when you go in that order, then you're a lot less overwhelmed. But I don't think there's a cookie cutter process for any of this, because things change all the time. I
Yeah.
like today, for example, I had this on the calendar. I knew I was going to come do this podcast, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, this meeting is not seeming like it's going to end anytime soon. And I'm like hoping it does, and it doesn't. And then the clock is ticking. My whole calendar is out of whack now. But I know that, okay, I needed to go to that meeting in order to graduate. I can't do anything about that. And I'm like grateful that you're so understanding. But it's like, okay, what comes first? Where can I be present? Because I had to be present in that meeting. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. So I couldn't like try to do those two things at the same time, which the past me would have tried. The
Yeah.
past me would have put that meeting on mute, turned off the camera for that, showed up for this podcast, and then go back. And that's just not effective and that's not sustainable because you're always going to be and try to be in two
Yeah.
places at the same time. And that's when you'll feel overwhelmed. But I'm like, okay, just communicate. So I shared with you, I'm like, okay, I'm in this meeting and you are so understanding, which I really appreciate. And that's how most people would be. I really believe that most people will be understanding. The world can wait,
Yeah.
just take the time that you need to take for the different tasks that you need to do because I would rather be fully present at a later time than half present at the
Yeah.
original time. Because what's the point? Is the point to be here at a certain time? Is the point to get this task done by the deadline, or is the point to gain something from it? Is the point to share something from it with it? So yeah, prioritizing your categories and then just making sure everything has a designated time and not feeling bad if things don't go according to the original plan. That's kind of how I balance and make sure that I'm not overwhelmed in how I prioritize.
One thing that I have learned is to adjust. So let's say if something happens, if you write me that you might be late, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this instead until you can show up, and then we do this. And I think that's where you can learn to not to beat yourself up, but you're like, okay, I can just and in my head, my whole schedule is like, it's just different schedule now. So you just keep reorganizing things, and I think learning to do that really quickly with time, it's really helpful because then you maybe take things a bit less personally. And another thing that I have heard Emily Frisella talk about, how to organize your week. So let's say at the end of the week you can have your calendar ahead of you and you can write like three lists: your haves, what you have to get done; your needs, what you need to get done that isn't as urgent as have to; and then your wants, what you want to get done, like having nails or going to like have a massage or something like that. So now when you have this list, you take the first list of your haves and you just put it in your schedule. I don't know, how important meeting, we're gonna do it then. Something about like, let's say about university, I'm gonna do it there, lectures, or another meeting, that's there, or like, I don't know, kids playing a game, that's there. um, and then once you have finished those, you go over your needs, things that you need to get done but they're not as urgent. You go over those, and once you have done with that, you add the wants. So then you can see, okay, I can do this, that. Sometimes you might not have time for your wants, but you know you can get it another week as well. um and like that's one thing that has been really helpful. And also like that adjusting, that's something that I have seen that really works for me. Even like I was working full time while I was in uni, full time as well. So I was working like, I don't know, up to 50 hours a week while studying full time and doing some learning on site as well. And I had a few clients as well. And I was training. So, like those things, when people tell me, oh, I can't manage to do it all, I'm like, well, if I can do it, you can do it. I'm no special. Um, it just comes with a lot of, especially in those times, and there's like really intense times that I have had before as well. That's when it comes down to priorities. Is your priority to be on social media, or is it to go for a few hours, sometimes even leave your phone in your room, go to library, study for a few hours, and then come back? Because you can go to library for 8 hours and get nothing done because you sit on your phone all day. Or you can go for like 2 hours and you can get more done than you would in those 8 hours. So like it's again about that being busy versus like being distracted. um and like that's one thing that is like really important. So like there was another point that I wanted to make, but I just forgot it. But like these things, they are, I have heard people tell me like, yeah, but when I'm planning everything, I'm being really restricted. And I'm like, well, not really, because then now you can actually see where you can have your free time. that somebody is like, oh, I have
Yeah.
so many things going on, and you postpone things or you're not organized and things like that, that's when you can have so much mess going on that you never have time for anybody. But then if you have a proper schedule and you stick to it, like not always, but most of the time, then you're like, okay, Friday from 5 to 7, I have free time, we can meet up. Like, and then you know when you actually are available, and that's when you also can be like more present, because you know, like, this is my social time, which is, that's
Right.
something that I do. I have in my schedule like few hours. There's like, I don't know, on Sundays a lot of times I edit, but I don't have any like meetings or calls or stuff like that, so I don't have any like social interactions. um
Mhm.
and that is when I'm like, I might edit, I might relax, which I haven't done in a while because of all the editing. It takes a lot of time. um but like, that's when I'm having that time when I'm just by myself. I know that one day a week I need where I'm just like recharging and I'm just by myself, even if I'm still doing some work, but I just don't communicate as much. So that's the time where like nobody can book a call with me, I'm by myself. Even if I'm doing a job, I'm still pretty offline mode, and that helps me to recharge. Or even like, one thing that is really helpful, even when you feel that you're getting close to overwhelm, is to just go for a walk in nature. It's really
Oh
simple,
yeah.
but it's so helpful, especially if you have no devices and you just walk and you listen to the nature. And that's where you can walk for like an hour and you feel like you're doing it for 2 hours because you have no distractions and you're actually being present.
Yeah.
And I remember
Yeah.
one time I went for a walk and I was like, it was only one walk, and I'm like, wow, I feel so energetic, so positive after like one time of walking. Because I think my headphones, they had no battery left, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go for a walk. I will not listen to like podcasts or anything like that. And it was amazing because you can hear the birds and you're just walking and you're just being present. And it's something that people think they don't have time for those things, but it's actually really important to find, which is a good lesson that I learned from the time when I was working, studying, and doing all those other things, is to schedule time to rest or relax
Oh yeah. Oh
or do
yeah.
something of those like things that before I would feel guilty for doing them. I would feel like, oh my
Right.
gosh, I'm wasting my time, I'm not being productive. But now I have learned that it's important to have those times when you just, and it doesn't have to be anything big. Like, even for me, just going for a walk for like a bit longer, that's when I'm like being off and I'm just being by myself. Or like, I don't know, sometimes watching a movie or something like that, where you just are by yourself and just enjoy that time with yourself and you don't feel bad about it. Or like, I don't know, have some
Yeah.
spa day or something like that.
Oh, that's my favorite. I love spa days. Something I do for myself is I've made this routine since I first started college. So it's been years now. I'm like, okay, every 2.5 weeks, I'm gonna go get my nails done. And that's just something that it's something simple, it's not, I'm not trying to say everybody needs to get their nails done. And it's not the getting the nails done part that's exciting for me. It's just I have that routine where I'm literally doing something completely outside of anything else that I'm like I usually do. It's that's my spa, time. So getting my nails done is my routine. I definitely love taking walks too. Like nature is so therapeutic, and it's very undervalued because people
Yeah.
think of like, okay, like at least let me go for a walk and listen to a podcast, or let me go for a walk and take a call or something. But what you said is so true. I don't do it nearly as often as I would like or need to. But you make time for what you want to make time for. So that's part of the reason why you need to schedule it. If you know that this is something that you would like to prioritize, then I should, make that a priority. So I'm hoping this summer, I'm going to be more consistent. I also hate the cold. So when it's cold outside, I need to find other things to do. But knowing that like prioritizing rest is definitely important, and that's the key to making sure that your life you feel content, because if you're working so hard and your business is successful, or your job, you're doing well at your job, like that's great and all, but like who are you coming home to? Because if you're coming home to a tired and stressed and overwhelmed and overworking individual, you feel like you're working at home too, you know,
Yeah.
in the time where you're supposed to rest. Like when you go to sleep at night, your brain is still going until it shuts off for the night, but it's still going. You know, you think
Yeah.
it's shutting off, but it's still going. And you wake up. That's how you can sometimes wake up with a headache, or you wake up with anxiety, or you wake up, you know, feeling stressed already and the day hasn't even started. So like before I go to bed every single night without fail, I should probably reduce the screen time. But without fail, I love going through TikTok or going through Instagram and just seeing the content. And I made sure that I filtered out anything that I know would trigger me or anything I know that would provide any form of negativity. Instagram, I love them. I love seeing all of your content. I love seeing everything. And even on TikTok, my algorithm is it's always funny, always makes me laugh. It's always
Yeah.
very, you know, uplifting or positive. So doing stuff like that before I go to bed, instead of like leaving for my computer, you know, a work task, and then I brush my teeth and go to sleep, doing something like that has become a routine to kind of get my mind to just rest. And like I said, I need to work on the screen time. So maybe I should, you know, still have some time in before between my, you know, screen and going to sleep. But doing little things like that, it doesn't have to be complicated. You know, you don't have to fly across the world for you to feel like, you know, you're vacationing. You can vacation by prioritizing, you know, your mental well-being and your rest. That's a vacation because you're vacationing from the things that usually stress you, or usually even if it's good stress, because my business is stressful but I love it, but it still takes a toll on you. And I
Okay.
don't think your body can really, I don't know science like this, so but I don't think your body can differentiate between stress that you enjoy and stress that's, you know, just negative stress. Either way it's stress, you know, either way you're putting that form of pressure on your body. And so all of those things that you mentioned, like taking the walks and stuff like that, and just tuning out, going offline, all of those things will help combat that. You know, it will help you be more centered in who you are, because it's like, okay, I can actually hear myself. You know, when so much stress, you
Yeah.
can't hear yourself. So now you can actually hear yourself. And if you're religious, you can spend time with God. And, you know, whatever it is that you're doing, um, at least you're present in your rest the same way you're present in your work. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And also, I think another thing that not even only resting, because I know, and I'm among those people that I didn't really like to rest. But one solution that I would give to those people is to find a hobby that is not related to what you do. So, like, let's
Oh
say,
yeah.
um, you can learn to play a guitar, you can learn maybe a new sport, or you can learn baking or something like
Yeah.
that. Just learn something that is, and that's one thing that I'm trying to do each year, is to learn at least one new skill outside of my field. So I have like personal trainer certificate, I have massage certificate. Then one year I was like learning to drive, then like digital marketing. So each year I learn something new outside of my field that is helping me to discover myself as a person. Because once you are only in one field, you actually limit yourself and your potential, because you're just like limiting yourself to this one thing. And people think like, well,
Right.
playing guitar is not related to running a business, and it's like, well, maybe it's not if you think about it, but you can learn so many things, or it might make you think about or come up with ideas that you wouldn't think of if you didn't go through those experiences. um, so that is
Right.
something, and it's not only about you learning something related to business. You learn about yourself, how you learn new skill, how
Yeah.
you, when you are like newbie and you know nothing and you keep failing, and learn to enjoy that like process of learning something new. That is something that I have found really exciting, where like you are still resting, but you still learn something new and
Yeah.
you develop yourself, and you can explore like different things that you like, which makes you a more like versatile person. So then you can have more interesting conversations with others, or maybe connect with others better, where they might be in different field, but you're like, oh, I did a course on this, it was pretty interesting and I would like to learn more, and things like
Right.
that. So I think that's amazing to learn like new skills outside of your field. Because I don't know, I have been finding it, I'm really curious, not just about like psychology and mindset and things like that, but like a lot of things. I'm really curious about so many things, and I like to understand. And it's awesome to understand through like practicing and learning. And then you can just, you never know
Oh,
where you can use those skills in the future.
exactly. I mean, that's really a part of personal branding as well. You know, not everything, personal branding is not only just how I can show up in my career, my business as myself, is also like, what are things that I can do outside of that? You know, not every hobby should be turned into a side hustle. Like there are
Yeah.
certain things that, you know, you want to do just because it's fun, you know, and I feel like that's one of the things that I always dislike about some of this culture you see on like social media. And it's always like, oh, if you like doing this, then trying to make a business out of it. No, because it's not always like that, you know? Cooking. I love cooking. I love it. And I don't do enough of it anymore, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping to get back to it in the summer. I started a food blog not to make money, not to do anything. It's not a business of mine, but it's just a place where like other people who like to cook can come and share their recipes with me, and I share my recipes with them. Sometimes all it does is that. And even if you don't even have to turn it into a blog, I turn it into a blog because I like writing, I like taking pictures, I like doing all of that stuff. So that was fun for me. But even if you just like to cook and you just say, I'm going to cook myself a dinner at least 3 times a week, a creative dinner, you
Yeah.
know, something that's, or try something new, or try different types of food and things like that. Like that's always fun. And personal branding, it works the same way with like people giving you a gift. You
Yeah.
know, when I hate shopping for people sometimes because I'm like, what do they want? What do they like? And part of personal branding is like making sure that who you are and what you like is communicated, so that if somebody wants to give you a gift, they know, okay, I know that you like baking. If I think you like baking because I've seen you, you know, bake before, even if it's not your career, even if you don't have a business out of your baking passion, I've seen you like baking. So I'm going to give you, you know, silicone like muffin tins, or I'm going to, you know, give you things that I know you're going to enjoy, things that don't necessarily have to do with, you know, what you're doing for your career. So I'm telling you, personal branding is in everything, you know, and
Yeah.
everything that you just said. Like that's literally like, if you like to do it, do it. You know, if you like to do it, tell people you like to do it, because maybe you can do it together. Because if
Yeah.
you tell me that you like baking and I love to cook and I'm terrible at baking, which is a true story, I'm like, let's bake something together. Teach me how to make something, you know, and that's, you build friendships, you know, you just enhance your own well-being as well. So I definitely think the skills, learning new skills
Yeah.
and being open to new experiences outside of your line of work is definitely very important. Very important.
Ironically, I was in baking some years ago. When I was
Ah,
younger, I was crazy. Like every birthday, every like celebration, I would bake a cake. And I was obsessed. I was like, if it took me like less than 2 hours or like 3 hours, it was too easy. So it was really interesting to, and I think I
wow.
have baked like at least 100 kinds of cakes, like so many different types. And it was just something that like when I'm interested in something, I just want to dive in and understand like everything around it. So I was like, oh, I gotta make
Yeah.
this cake, this cake, this cake. I have made so many different cakes. Um, but that's when like you learn and you develop yourself. And for me, it's like only recently, well, not recently, but since when I moved here, that's when I started to cook more. So I'm like the opposite to you. I'm like relatively new to cooking,
Yeah. No,
but I have done baking
baking.
fast. But like even this
No, that's good. I
podcast,
have so much.
it's like a hobby for me. One thing that I missed was having conversations with people that are like-minded, or that I can learn from, they can learn from me, and we just sit down and have conversation. Because some of my friends, when I meet them, we can sit down and talk for hours, and that's something that I was missing because they are busy, I'm busy, we never have time. So I was like, well, I don't know how. I was just like, I want to start a podcast. And then I was thinking, well, I don't want to do monologue because I think at some point I would get bored and I wouldn't learn as much new. And then I was like, oh, I could do like interviews, but I didn't want to make it interview type because I think it's a bit too like formal. It's not as like natural. And then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
invite them and we're just gonna have a conversation and just see where it goes. And that's usually the best conversations you have because you can never know what will come out of it.
Yeah. No, that's, I mean, like, first of all, so much admiration for you bakers, because that's hard for me. Like, first of all, that takes so much patience
Oh yeah.
and so much practice. Like cooking, I like because I'm like, okay, if I mess this up, I can literally like just throw in a couple more ingredients and I can make something work. But baking, you won't know until it's out the oven. So,
Yeah.
and I have so much. My cousin is an excellent baker. I she's great. So like, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start eating your things. I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to stay in my corner, which is also very important too, because, you know, not everything is for you, you know?
Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I have to learn this. 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 And it's like, they don't enjoy it either, because it's like, yes, it's a good skill to have. Like, I'm sure it's going to be very useful for me to learn how to bake. But if it's not for me, I don't have to force it, you know? So for that to be, you know, the forefront of somebody's mind saying, okay, I want to learn new skills, but if it's not for me, I'm going to move on to something else, then you know, that'll be fine. But if you if you just try to do a new skill and you realize, okay, this is not for me, but you push yourself through it and it's a hobby, it's just a hobby, then that's when you're going to face other problems. Like if you started this podcast and you weren't enjoying it, but you kept going, then you know, you're doing yourself a disservice. So it's amazing that you love to do this podcast, because I think that this format is so helpful because it's so natural and people feel like they can join in on a
Yeah.
conversation. I know for me, I like podcasts where it's two people or more than two people that are sharing different perspectives, because I myself, you know, I was a political science major pre-law. So everything to me is about like perspectives and philosophy. So everything is like perspectives and analyzing different perspectives. So I never really liked listening to one lecture at the front of the classroom that just lectures me the whole time and that's the only perspective I'm hearing. I definitely love to do discussions, even if I didn't participate in as form of speaking. I was definitely taking in everybody's ideas and taking everybody's perspective. So definitely love the format of your podcast, in that, you know, you can hear different perspectives. And the conversation where people respect each other's ideas. I mean, I think we're on the same page about everything, but even if I wasn't on the same page, it's a conversation that can be had. And it's something that was definitely missing this last year. It was a difficult year for that because, you know, of the strained communication, and Zoom is not really the easiest thing after so long. So the fact that you're able to still have this much of an engaging platform and this much of an engaging podcast, even through Zoom, it's amazing, because it literally feels like I'm sitting, you know, on the couch and we're having this type of conversation. So definitely love what you're doing, and you should definitely keep going, because I'm pretty sure there's so many people out there who want their voices to be heard and they want to talk to people and discuss, but they think that it's not possible virtually. But you know, you're showing that it is. You're definitely showing that it is.
Yeah, well, it's all really about finding solutions. So if you can't sit down with somebody, or let's say, I don't know, it's like one thing that I keep saying this. I was joking around with my brother that I need to have an intro music before I start a podcast. Um, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
well, it's not really the way it is. And then I just started with what I had, and then like I think few episodes back, that's when I got my music at last, and like nothing bad happened, or like even like one thing that I set myself was to do before I decide whether I want to keep going or not. I have to do like 100 episodes. And that's when I can decide, because a lot of
Hmm.
times when you start off, you will have a lot of obstacles to overcome, or a lot of challenges, or I don't know, somebody doesn't show up, something happens, and like, and then you can be like, okay, this is not for me. But that's when you have to keep going, and that's why it's important to set some kind of um maybe a place where you have to push yourself a little, where you have to get to that place and then you make decision. Because I think at the beginning it's never easy. Something happens, something goes wrong. And that's another thing I wanted to mention earlier. When it comes to deciding the tasks that you want to do in your business, or when you're building your brand or something like that, think about whether you're choosing that task because it's more important or it's more comfortable. So let's say, when it
Mm,
comes to building your
yeah.
business, what are the most important tasks? For business, usually that's income. So you have to focus on getting your clients. When you get your clients, that's when you can actually delegate, when you can find a VA that is helping you with some things that you might not want to do, or that is making or taking like too long for you to do, or you feel like overwhelmed doing them. At the beginning, probably you're gonna do it everything yourself. I think everybody does it like that. But it's understanding that, okay, now that it's too much, you have to shift towards tasks that are the most important, which most of the time they are most uncomfortable. Those are the tasks that you don't want
Yeah.
to do. um, so I think that's important
Yeah.
to sit down and think on is this task actually the most important, or I'm trying to tell myself that it's important for me to do, because it's more comfortable for me to do this task instead of something else. And I have done it many times myself when I'm like, well, I have to do this instead, it's really important, but I know it's not the main thing that I have to do. But like that's when you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be like, well, actually, which is that what I said, are you busy or are you productive? If you're just busy trying to make yourself feel good
Right.
about doing something, well, you will just run in circles until you crash, pretty much. um, so focus on the most important
Yeah.
tasks and get out of your comfort zone, just for the sake of getting out of your comfort zone. Because like as uncomfortable as it is pretty fun to get out of your comfort zone and discover yourself and how you deal with like certain situations. So let's say one time when I was recording a podcast, mid podcast, I get notification that I don't have enough memory in my laptop. And I'm like, oh, what do I do? Because it stops recording automatically. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I quickly went, deleted something, then we continued. But like that's when you adjust accordingly and you just find solution on the spot. Because like, and that's one thing that is another thing that I tell people that want to start to do something, that want to have this perfect plan. And I was among them. I probably still am. But I'm trying to overcome it. Not trying, I'm working towards like overcoming it. So let's say you want to have this like perfect plan of what you're gonna do. But the thing is, no matter how perfect your plan is, you can't predict any like every obstacle that will come up. So if I sat down before I
Right.
started podcast
Right.
and I would think about any problem that could come up. I had one time when for no reason, and it was the only time I have ever had on Zoom, that my audio just went down as I'm speaking. It just, for some reason, it just goes down to where you can't hear me all the time. And it would just mess up my audio where you just can't listen it properly. And you can just can't predict that thing because it has never happened. Like I have never had, and since then I have never had any call where my audio is randomly going down. I didn't know why it happened. I didn't know what fixed it. I had no idea, but it happened. And you can't predict it. It just happens. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Right.
do I
Right.
post this episode? Because the audio was so bad on my side that it disrupts the way you listen to the podcast, but you just can't actually focus because you hear that sound all the
Mm.
time. And I was writing that person, which was with Bianca B, and I was like, I'm not sure about the audio. And she said that if I want, we can do it again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can we please? Um, but it's something that you can't predict
Oh,
because like our conversation was 2 hours.
yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, 2 hours and I can't post it because of my audio. Um, but it's something that you go through and you just learn along the way. Even like when it comes to memory, now before every episode, I make sure I have enough memory. But I wouldn't be able to predict that before or ahead of a time. It just
Until
happens.
something happened.
Yeah, that's the main thing with like taking action. It's that
No, yeah.
just start.
No, yeah. I mean, that's an excellent example. You're never going to be ready, so just start and learn as you go.
Yeah,
Learn through the experiences that you have, learn through your mistakes. Don't be afraid of making mistakes because mistakes is how you learn. If everything was perfect, then what's the point? Because you figuring out through and learning through your mistakes is not only building your own, strength, but it's also showing you different alternative solutions. And so if somebody's facing the same problem, like if somebody has an audio issue, if you've worked through that yourself, you can connect with them and teach them or show them what you did to help. So
yeah.
it's always a cycle. You learn from other people's mistakes, you learn from your own, you learn from other people's achievements as well, and other people are going to learn from yours. It's a constant cycle. There's going to have to be some achievements and there's going to have to be some mistakes, but every mistake is an opportunity to learn. So I wouldn't look at it as a mistake. It's literally just a learning opportunity.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I switched because I always had that feeling that I have to have everything like figured out before I start doing it. Because I want everything to be like perfect or think about every single detail. And then I was like, well, I'm actually slowing myself down with doing it this way. Even with podcast, I was like, okay, I want to have a podcast. And for me, it wasn't official until I bought myself a microphone. And I'm like, now this is official. I'm starting a podcast.
Yeah.
um, And like that's when I was like, okay, no excuses. Now you can't say that you don't have enough things that you need or something like that, because I was like, oh, I don't have perfect background, I don't have audio, I don't have video. But then I get like, I have like web camera and I have like microphone, and that's about it. But that's, and you don't even have to need those things, but in my head that helped me to make it official, that now like this is getting real, I'm actually bringing it in reality by taking those steps.
Yeah.
And that's when like usually that's where I try to sometimes push people. And like even now when I know that you want to work on your video, I will keep messaging you about it from time to time, reminding about it. Because sometimes all we need is somebody who is just pushing us a little bit. And that's when you over, and like usually
Yeah.
that we just have it in our head, and it's really small, like I don't know, obstacle for us to overcome. And once you overcome it and you're on the other side, you're like, how did I not do it in the first place? Like what? For me it was the same with like video. I was like, why I
Yeah.
was so, funny thing, when I was listening back on podcasts, before I was like always cringe, video, photo, I don't like it. But then when I listened back on the podcast, I would listen to podcast and I catch myself being like, listening to myself and be like, what is she going to say? Like I was actually intrigued listening to myself, and I was like laughing about my
Oh,
jokes or
that's
something
amazing.
like that. But that's the important thing, is that you see yourself from the side and you see that, well, actually,
Yeah.
I'm better than I thought. Or maybe you see yourself where you're like, oh, I thought I'm not like this or that, but you see that actually it isn't the way you were thinking it is. So in a way you see yourself from like different perspective, and you're like, it isn't that bad. Or if you think that it's
Right.
better than it was, you see that, well, actually it wasn't that good, but now you have something to work on. But you wouldn't know that unless you saw it and you were able to see like, yeah, here I was like this, I didn't like it, I'm gonna change it next time. But that's just data. You don't think like, oh my gosh, everybody gonna see that I messed up. Like I have had several times when
Yeah.
something in audio happens, or something I say, or something like even like internet or stuff like that, and I'm like, the perfectionist in me is like, oh my gosh. But then I'm like, okay, people will see that I'm just a human.
Yeah.
So you're allowed to make mistakes, especially when you start off, as long as you learn from them.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're doing amazing. So keep going. You're doing so great.
Doing my
So I
best.
really think that you're not showing any sign of you being nervous or any sign of this not being your comfort zone, but keep showing up, keep doing it, because I think it shows people, it shows me that anything is possible. It shows me that one day, when I actually tell myself I'm going to do it, I will be able to do it and look back, like you
Yeah.
said, and look back and say, how did I not do this before? That was the same with me with reels. I just started making reels, and I mean, you'll never see me dancing on a reel. And if you do, then that just shows you that I'm really like completely comfortable. But same with reels, just like the little minimal like talking on camera or anything like that. Like definitely what you said, looking back, you're like, wow, like how did I not do this before? It's not that bad. So definitely keep going. And I definitely need you as that accountability partner, because I think
Oh
that's
yeah, for
also so
sure.
important, having, like you said, having that person to remind you of the things that you said you were going to do. And I will do the same for you, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think I'm doing that to everybody, because I have had people that do it to me, and I know it works and it's really helpful. And like several times it's even enough to hear like one sentence. When they tell you one sentence and you're like, wow, how did I not think about it? And then you like,
Yeah.
even like when I before I started posting on this Instagram, I have another one that I started that was the new one. And I was called out being like, so, and it is mainly because I was like afraid to post where I have people follow me that know me like personally, or they have certain image of me, of who I
Yeah.
am and things like that. And uh that person was like, so you have like 1,500 followers and like 300 posts, and you want this profile to be personal. And I'm like, yeah. You're just shying away. You're just like trying to feel good about doing something, but not doing it. And I'm like, yeah, makes sense. So that's when I posted like, and I've been posting on this profile since. And I'm like, well, how did I not do it this at first? Because like when I posted about my
At
podcast, I
first.
had like I don't know, over like 10 people reach out to me and tell me that they look forward to it. And I'm like, wow, I didn't expect anybody to like react in any way. But that's when you just get out of your comfort zone. And now, like, once you get out of your comfort zone, it becomes your new normal. So now you're like, well, this is normal. And then you see somebody who is struggling with that. And you're like, you know what? If I can do it, you can do it, because I was there at some point.
You could do it too.
Yeah, exactly. So we all need
Exactly.
those, like what you said at the beginning, somebody who is like even one step ahead, and they can look back at you and they're like, well, I was there like even a few months ago. If I can do it, then you can do it too. And it isn't that bad. And then just help each other out, because like I think that's important thing is that you are not competing to others. It's all about getting better and helping each other out. So instead of being like, oh my gosh,
Exactly.
something else in my field, like they are now my competition, or I have to steal their like I don't know clients or whatever. Um, it's more about seeing what they do and supporting what they do and like learning from each other and helping each other out to like I don't know support your clients. Like it's not about who is better. Like it's always about you against you, not about you or like whether you're better than somebody else. And the only way you
Right.
can get better is, well, just get better than you were yesterday. Like you can't know if you're better
Exactly.
than somebody else, because it's like, let's say if we did the same thing and one person would want to work with you and they wouldn't want to work with me, but we provide exactly the same service. Maybe they just don't like my face. You don't know. Like maybe they like your messaging better or the way you communicate, and they don't like the way I communicate. Like you can never know what's the reason behind it, but it doesn't make one person better than the other. It's just that like different people like
Exactly.
different people. It's just like I don't know, just support each other on your journeys.
No, yeah. Competition is no good when you think of it as competition. Like in business and everything like that, they're always like, assess your competitors. I just look at them as potential collaborators. These are people that I can if we're doing the same thing, maybe one day we can start something together, or maybe I can come and guest share on yours, and you can come guest share on my
Yeah.
platform, and just always look for modes of collaboration as opposed to ways to like level up and get on top of each other, because also people move at different paces. You know, you could see me on Instagram and you can say, okay, this is what she did to get her followers. Let me try to get those followers. And I'm already thinking about YouTube. So like
Yeah.
you're competing with my Instagram self, but I'm already gone. I'm on YouTube.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I look at that with people that I'm, consider like my Instagram mentors. And I look at them and I'm like, you'll have that moment. It's completely transparent. You'll have that moment like, how can I get to that point? Like, how can I get this much engagement as she's getting, and all of those things. And instead of trying to mimic and copy what they're doing, just get the basics. So with her, I'm like, she's getting super great engagement because she's asking engaging questions. So it's like, I could ask engaging questions. I'm not going to go and say I'm going to ask the same exact question that got her all of these responses, but I'm like, I know to prioritize asking questions in my captions or just posting in my stories and just getting people talking. You learn the root of what it is that they're doing. But if you try to copy everything that they're doing, it's not going to be sustainable. And
Yeah,
the
and it's
same
not
way,
you
if you're
anymore.
frustrated that somebody's copying, right, it's not. And if somebody's copying you, like I always say, my favorite quote, I didn't make it up. I don't remember where I learned it though. So I'll find it and I'll tell you. But the quote is, they can copy, but their paste won't be the same. And that's the same
Yeah.
with anything. That will make you realize that people are going to try to do exactly what you're doing because they see it's working, and they're not going to ever be able to paste it the way, and have it be an exact copy of what you're doing, because your soul, your personality, your personal brand is infused with what you're doing. In the same way with you copying somebody else, you're going to try to copy. If you're going to try to copy people, like, you have to know that it's never going to come out the same, because you can't copy their soul. You can't copy their passion. You can't copy their actual zest for their business, or their zest for their job. You can't copy any of that. So you can try, it's just not going to work out for you. And that's how a lot of people end up behind, because they're always looking to the next person to do what they're doing so that they can get on top of them, when really they could have gotten ahead if they wanted to work with those people or learn from them. Either hire them as a coach, or hire them,
Yeah.
take part of their service, and reach out to them to see if maybe you could do a collaboration. But always just look at it as, we're not supposed to be against each other. There's plenty of money for everybody. There's plenty of people, I don't know the count, but there's plenty of people in the world for, for there to be several of like coaches in the same niche. Like you don't have to be the only person in your field, because there's no way you'll be able to talk to everybody. So it's okay. There's so many clothing brands out there for a reason, because today I want to wear jeans, but tomorrow I want to put on a dress. So I'm going to go to the company that I usually buy jeans from. But if there's another company that has cool jeans, I'm going to buy from them too. Like, there's plenty of money out there for these companies, and for you, as if you're starting a business, for you to get the business. There's
Yeah.
plenty of opportunities to grow an audience. So yeah, definitely collaboration over competition any day, any day.
I think like Grant Cardone, I think I read in one of his books that there's enough money in the world for everybody to be a millionaire.
Yeah,
Of course, the distribution of it is a bit different with, like, let's say 20/80 rule and things like that, but in general. So it's not that there's lack of money. And I think also when you are chasing or trying to be like that person, it's not only that you're behind them, but you're also not authentic anymore. And like that's why for me
exactly.
it's I have never even like I haven't really had I'm not that big for like people to copy me or something like that, but I'm not even like bothered by it. Like even like let's say I have one of my clients who is now working towards like getting her own clients doing something similar that I'm doing. And I'm not being like, "Oh my gosh, how could you do this?" Like I'm like, "Wow, it was so helpful for her that she wants to go out and help other people." So like for me, it's not
Help
something
other
that I'm
people.
like being I don't know. I think most of the time it's just like your ego is getting in the way and you feel that you're this super special and whatever person, but we all are just human. And even like competition, one
Yeah,
big thing that I learned about competition was that it's actually a good thing in a way that it's not about putting others down. It's about pushing each other to your limits. Where you, if you compete with somebody, you will get better results than if you go by yourself because you have this person who is
right.
either like similar level or maybe a bit better, but you when you compete with them you actually both push each other, so that's when you actually benefit from this like competition. um and like that's the way I would see. Before I was looking at competition as something bad, and after learning this lesson I was like, wow, this is something that I want to develop and actually look more into, where I find people that I can like where we push each other and we like compete but in a positive way where we just get the best out of each other. Um and that's where you when you get to your like limits and you can see that, well, actually I can get more done, and it's just because of this influence of the other person. And that is something that I was like, and also I think Gary Vee was talking about it, that you don't build the highest building by breaking down every other building. You build the highest building by building the highest building. So
Yeah, yeah, that's a great line.
um maybe you can tell about where people can find you or things like that. I'm still gonna link it below, but if somebody is really keen on finding you right now.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Salima Omwenga. You can also find me on my website. It's www.u-flourish.com. So I answer anywhere. You can find me on LinkedIn. My Instagram is my name. So just anywhere you look for me, just use my name because that's where it is most times. But if you want if you want to book a free consultation and we can discuss, your personal brand, feel free to go to www.u-flourish.com. And I'm looking forward to meeting every single one of you.
Well, thank you for this conversation. I think it was really interesting conversation, and we're talking about quite interesting topics. So like thank you for
Yeah.
bringing your like knowledge and expertise, because this was awesome conversation.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Your podcast is amazing. I love that we're able to talk about a range of topics that are so important, but not really discussed as much as they should. So I really appreciate you for inviting me here, and I am looking forward to speaking to you again.
Okay, thank you.